Day 2 of the 2025 NFL Draft is finished. It's in the books, and now it's time to hit the books and give you my draft grades for rounds 2 and 3. That's right. It's time for Day 2 draft grades for every NFL team. If that sounds good, Gronk, spike the like button, show your love, show your support, and of course, hit the comments. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my letter grade for every NFL team. Remember, this is strictly a grade for Day 2, so only the picks from round 2 and round 3. And it should be in alphabetical order, but sometimes I have issues with the alphabet, okay? Sometimes I do. Don't be a jabroni, subscribe, and let's go. Beginning with the Arizona Cardinals, I give the Cardinals an A for their second and third round. They only had 2 selections, and by the way, guys, I'm not evaluating a draft based on how many picks you had. Oh my goodness, you had 8 picks. Congratulations. No, it's about the quality over quantity, okay? And for me, the Cardinals had quality, especially picking Will Johnson with the 15th pick in the second round. We thought he might go with the 16th pick in the first round, okay? Will Johnson, best corner in the draft for my money. Now, I don't know why he fell. I don't know how serious the injury issues are. I don't have the medicals. I don't know. But what I do know is that he can cover. He's tall, he's long, his transition skills, he is smooth, okay? He breaks on the football beautifully, okay? He is a cover corner. He is a perimeter lockdown zone corner at his best. He is a perfect fit for Jonathan Gannon's defense. The team that had the worst perimeter corner play in the sport last year landed the best corner in the class. It's worth the risk in the middle of the second round. That is a need fit. That is a money pick, a steal, a value, however you may put it. Will Johnson is a beautiful pick for the Cardinals. That's why they get the A, okay? They also pick Jordan Birch out of Oregon. I like him for the Cardinals because he's a hybrid, okay? 6'4", 279. He's got some size to him. He can play, I feel, all over the defensive front. He also was productive last year, 8.5 sacks in 10 games in 2024. He plays with power, okay? And he can disrupt the quarterback. He also had the 7th fastest 40 at 4.67 at an edge that is 279 pounds. That's an impressive athlete. So this is a guy that can help them, I believe, on the edge, setting the edge with power. I think he's a guy that might be able to work, a little bit inside as well, off of a guard, and be able to use quickness and his athleticism to beat a guard. So yeah, a hybrid edge defender that can help the rotation. Now, my one concern here, although I gave them an A, is maybe they could have added a wide receiver at some point on this day in the third round, maybe over the edge rusher, which it feels like they've already addressed that position kind of continuously throughout the offseason. But they're continuing to strengthen their defense, going Walter Nolan in the first round. Then they get the best corner in the draft, which is an A++ pick. Then they get a versatile defender who can fit in with the rotation of guys like Josh Sweat. That I think the Cardinals defense is truly elevated. I think it might be one of the most improved units in all of football. Dalvin Tomlinson, Calais Campbell, Walter Nolan, Will Johnson. You already have an awesome safety duo. If they can hit a linebacker here in the draft, I'd be very satisfied if I was a Cardinal fan. So I give them an A because they got a steal. They got a guy they might have taken in the first round, in the second round, and then they add Birch on top of that. The Atlanta Falcons get a B+ for me. They only had 1 selection, but I preferred this selection over the value of their 2 picks in the first round, especially that James Pierce trade, which I thought was ridiculous. The Jalen Walker move, I can understand it. I'm not the biggest Jalen Walker guy. But in terms of Day 2, they get Xavier Watts as a value, in my opinion, the safety out of Notre Dame. I think he fits their defense well. He's a split safety with, the ability to play, I think, man and zone. I think he is a smart player that still possesses enough physicality to play in the box, right? So he had 13 interceptions and 13 passes defensed over the last 2 seasons. I think he can complement Jesse Bates well. And when you look at Raheem Morris's scheme, they love to play a ton of zone coverage, and they love to play a lot of too high. So I think Watts, 6 foot, 204, he was seen for me as like a top 3 or 4 safety in that category for me. He's got good instincts. I think he's a good tackler. He's just an all-around, well-rounded safety. He's probably not going to be a superstar, but he's a definite starter with high intelligence, high instincts, and all-around a good safety. So I think he's a solid player. They do also have Jordan Fuller, who's familiar with the Raheem Morris scheme. I think Watts is probably a more well-rounded player, while Fuller is probably a little bit more rangy in his capabilities, potentially. But yeah, I think that's a nice little safety trio for Raheem Morris in 2025, and that's a long-term solution at the position that they're looking for, because Fuller's only on a 1-year contract. So I give them a B+. They got a player that I thought might go in the 2nd round, in the 3rd round, so I like that pick. Next, we have the Baltimore Ravens getting an A-. The only reason I didn't give it an A or an A+ is because Mike Green has off-the-field concerns, and there's a reason he fell to where he fell, right? The 27th pick in the 2nd round. There's a reason he fell that far in the draft, because this is a top 10 talent in the draft, in my opinion. This is the 2nd best pure pass rusher in the entire draft. His bag of tricks as a pass rusher is impressive. His bend, his quickness, his hand usage, it's all there. Okay, this guy has all the traits that you're looking for from a 10-sack artist in the NFL. And I love this pick for the Ravens because it's a team that can inherently take on risk. They're extremely talented. They've built a great physical culture with great leadership, specifically on defense. Kyle Hamilton, Roquan Smith. There's guys that are going to be able to lead this guy on the right path and get him motivated. Marlon Humphrey, right? They have Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson. This is a very strong locker room that can take on a presence like Mike Green if he's having issues off the field, right? Then on top of that, you've got the pick. The biggest need that I felt like they had on their roster was a pure pass rusher. And they addressed that with a late 2nd round pick, which is absolutely beautiful for Baltimore. I mean, it doesn't get any better than getting a guy that had 17 sacks in college football last year, one of the best pure pass rushers in the entire draft, a guy that I thought without the off-field concerns would have been a top 10, top 15 pick in the draft. And you get him in the 2nd round, the late 2nd round. Like, that is an A by itself. But then you kind of bring the concerns into that. Like, how concerning is the off-field stuff? Was this a reach? Because maybe he might not even play. Like, what's going to happen with his off-the-field stuff? So Baltimore better have checked that, because I don't know. Like, I personally don't know. I'm not in the NFL. I'm not in Baltimore. I'm not in their building. So I don't know, guys. But then on top of that, I thought Emory Jones Jr. out of LSU, he's a typical Raven pick. 6'5", 315, extremely physical, powerful, big run defender, mauler type of tackle. Makes a lot of sense. He started 36 games at right tackle for LSU. He played on the other side of Will Campbell. He was a monster, okay? Does have some issues, in my opinion, with his footwork and his hand placement and his ability to pass protect. But as a mauler, I think he's a big-time guy. Now, I don't know if this was the biggest need, on their roster. I will say that Ronnie Stanley commonly gets injured. Right tackle for them with Rosengarten is solid, but not epic. And maybe they could have used a guard over a tackle. So that's a nitpick. But overall, I thought that Baltimore did a pretty darn good job just by itself getting Mike Green. He might be the best player that they draft. If he is square and he is straight off the field, he's probably even better than Malachi Starks. And they got Malachi Starks in the 1st round. I thought that was a good pick. So that's Baltimore. Next up, we have the Buffalo Bills receiving a B. This one's interesting because I like the players. I don't love the players they picked. They also traded up for TJ Sanders, eliminating them from 2 second-round picks and moving back into the 3rd round, picking up extra draft capital. TJ Sanders is interesting out of South Carolina, 6'4", 297, not quite 300 pounds. Another light defensive tackle who, for his size, is a good run defender. But I also think that he is the ideal Buffalo Bill defensive tackle when you're talking about shooting gaps, penetrating, using quickness. He has some similarities to Walter Nolan in that regard, right? Some people had him as like a top 5 D tackle. I felt like defensive tackle in this class was kind of like not consensus after the top 3 guys that went in the 1st round or whatever. But He's light and strong. That's a good way to categorize him. And I feel like he'll be good in pass rush situations, in my opinion, because he's got that quickness. He's got that quick hands, right? And beside Ed Oliver, that's two quick defensive tackles that can win up the field with penetration. And that's what Sean McDermott looks for in his interior defensive lineman. So I like the fit. I just felt like they didn't really have to trade up for him as aggressively as they did. Maybe they love him even more than I do. So I'll take that with a grain of salt. That's just why I can't give it like an A+, because they did have to trade up and be aggressive to get him with the 9th pick in the 2nd round. Landon Jackson, I thought was a steal with the 8th pick in the 3rd round. He was commonly seen as maybe a 2nd round pick. He's got really impressive length and size. He's 6'6", 264. So they addressed the defensive line in the 2nd and the 3rd round. This is a guy that's probably not going to be amazing as a pass rusher. He doesn't have incredible quickness. He doesn't have incredible bend. He's very stiff. But what he does provide is strength, power, edge setting, right? No edge setter actually jumped higher in the process, 40.5 inches, which is interesting here. Also, just overpowers people. Like, that's his game, right? Uses his length, uses his reach, uses his strength to just overpower people. The guy looks like a Batman villain, Victor Zsasz. I mean, he has no eyebrows. He's super intimidating. So I like the Bills addressing defense. This is definitely something I wanted to see from them. They get stronger and deeper on the defensive front. You love to see that. They get younger as well. I would have personally liked them to address safety, but hopefully they still address that in the 4th or 5th round, and I'll give it even more of a thumbs up. So I'm looking at their picks and saying I don't think either of them are truly difference makers, which is why I give them a B. I think the needs are met to a certain degree, but I also felt like safety was a big miss. I felt like they should have addressed safety on day 2, but that's just my opinion. That's why I give them a solid B. Also, having to trade up does kind of sour it just a tad, but you could argue B+ as well. The Carolina Panthers, I went with the B+ because I love that they addressed edge multiple times instead of addressing edge in the 1st round. So they get T-Mac, who, in my opinion, was the best pure receiver in the draft, not named Travis Hunter, right? So they get him, they help out Bryce Young, and they fulfill their last remaining need on the offensive side of the football pretty much. Maybe they could use a tight end, but that's nitpicking, right? So T-Mac was like that last remaining weapon that they really needed for Bryce Young, okay? Now today they get Nick Skurton, or Skorton. I always mess his name up, but he's a baller, and he's a guy that actually, when you look at his 2023 tape, he was extremely impressive, like probably easily a 1st round pick, but he gained some size at Texas A&M after transferring from Purdue, putting up some awesome numbers at Purdue, looking like a really savvy, quick edge rusher at Purdue that could produce some sacks and pressure. And he went up in size and had to be more of an edge setter type at Texas A&M, playing with Shamar Stewart, right? And that kind of hurt his draft stock because he was kind of playing a little bit out of position and things like that. But I thought this was like a steal. At the 19th pick in the 2nd round, there were rumors that this guy would go late 1st round, early 2nd round. So I felt like this was a great value for him. I think he has enough bend, okay? And I think that he has a pretty good mix of quickness and power. I also love his physicality and his lack of regard for his body. He's physical, like he is going to make plays in the backfield. He's got good size, explosive power, 6'3", 257, and I think he will go down a little bit in size to contribute to the Panthers. I don't think he really has the range to be like a drop back type of edge player where he's in coverage and things like that, but he's a straight ahead pass rusher. I think he'll start immediately for the Panthers and contribute as an every down potential player. Okay, so I really like that. I also like Princely, who they took in the 3rd round, who's a really good pass rusher. Just a guy that you probably put in early in his career on 3rd downs. He's explosive, a speed rusher with great length. He can get around a tackle and get to the quarterback, and that's what the Panthers are looking for, and another added dimension to their pass rush. So yeah, I give them a B+ because now they've addressed their biggest need on offense, their biggest needs on defense multiple times with edge rushers. Maybe I could nitpick and say they could have used a safety here. A linebacker might be needed as well. Even a corner. Like, I think they should continue to address defense for the rest of the draft. But I like that they double dipped at edge with 2 players that are a little bit different. One's more of like a pure 3-down edge player, probably the best player on their board there in Nick. And then they get Princely, who's more of a pure pass rush specialist. And the Panthers needed pass rush big time. So I give them a B+. Then you've got the Chicago Bears. I give them a B+ as well. This is kind of a confusing draft, but at the same time, I thought they got 3 really good players. So I may not agree with the strategy necessarily, but I do agree with the player selection. So Luther Burden out of Missouri is an electric playmaker with the ball in his hands. He's arguably the most special wide receiver in this class. Maybe Travis Hunter with the ball in his hands, his ability to just make people miss, his instincts, his malleable nature where he's just able to manipulate his body, the way that he moves, the way that he runs, right? He dips around people and he stops and he starts. It's special. That trait is special. He also has great vertical ability to go down and pluck the ball out of the air with very confident and cocky hands. I think he's the 3rd receiver for Chicago now, playing the position that he played in college, which is primarily inside as a slot player. You can also manufacture him touches at the wide receiver position where he's going to be a dynamic force in the slot, screen department. You can hand him handoffs, somewhat of a Deebo Samuel type manufactured player, right? He does need to grow as a route runner and things like that. But Ben Johnson could do a lot of creative things with this type of playmaker with the ball in his hands. And he doesn't have to be relied upon on every down because they have 2 great tight ends now with Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet. They have DJ Moore and Rome Odunze that can play outside most of the time. So I like the fit for Luther Burden. And they did kind of need a 3rd receiver. Like, Zacchaeus is fine, but he's not Keenan Allen like they had last year, right? So I really like this pick. And he went in the range that most people expected. Ozzie out of Boston College is 6'8", 316 as an offensive tackle, an absolute monster. He's got a guy with upside, I feel like they definitely were looking at offensive line in the 1st round potentially, and I think this is a guy that has enough quickness along with incredible size that makes him worth a pick. I would also say that he's played both left tackle and right tackle and started a ton of games, 34 games, I believe, 10 games at left tackle, 24 games at right tackle, according to ESPN here. And they needed depth at tackle because if Braxton Jones is the guy, great. But if Braxton Jones is not the guy, let's continue to take swings at tackle. Let's have long-term solutions, right? So I like that. You can't really go wrong with that. I think Shamar Turner is an excellent pick who they got in the late 2nd round. So they had 3 second-round picks here, which is incredible, And I think Shamar Turner is a player that I really like for them because he adds some juice to their defensive tackle position. He's 6'3", 290, which is a little undersized. But in Dennis Allen's defense, I feel like it will work to just have a penetrating, quick defensive tackle that can just be tough for blockers, like get to the quarterback. They need another disruptive guy up front that can help pass rush, that can help get to the quarterback. Grady Jarrett, Andrew Billings, these guys are stout, but they're not explosive. They're not quick. They're no longer guys that are going to get to the quarterback consistently. So I think Shamar Turner rotates into this rotation as a player that adds a unique skill set to the Bears defense. So I like what they did here. I would just say that I feel like edge has yet to be addressed, and that's something that I would have liked to have seen them pick. I also do wonder if wide receiver should have been their first selection in the 2nd round rather than a running back. I would have maybe rather have seen a running back selected there, but that's just my opinion. Okay, that's why it's not quite an A territory. The Cincinnati Bengals get a B- for me. Shamar Stewart has incredible upside in the 1st round, but on day 2, Demetrius Knight was not my favorite pick in the middle of the 2nd round. That definitely felt like a need reach, in my opinion. He is graded as like a top 3 linebacker for a majority of people, but I'm not quite sure about him. I'm not quite sure about his ability in coverage. He is very good as an old school thumper linebacker, though, and plays with great instincts and downhill physicality. He's going to come and he's going to bring it, right? He's going to bring it downhill. So I'm a little bit worried about his range and his coverage ability, which linebackers in today's age need to be very good at. So maybe he was a little overdrafted for that. I also just felt like linebacker, this class is not exactly phenomenal. So I felt like that was a bit of a reach, but I did really like the Dylan Fairchild pick. He plays with nastiness. He's a mauler. He plays with physicality. He's a little unrefined, but he played 24 starts at left guard for the Cincinnati Bengals. I think he could probably immediately start on a pretty weak guard position for Cincinnati, and he's going to bring Joe Burrow's offensive line just a nastiness that they covet, that they need. Like, they just need a guy that can go out there and maul people and just be angry and be just an instigator. So I really like the Fairchild pick in the 3rd round. I'm just not a huge fan of the Demetrius Knight pick, despite the need at linebacker that they probably do have. The Cleveland Browns, A- for me. I didn't like the Quinshawn Judkins pick out of Ohio State, just because, like, he wasn't my favorite running back. Like, he was probably, like, I'm not even a big fan. Like, honestly, in my opinion, I had Travion ahead of him for sure. I had Harvey ahead of him, and I had the Caleb Johnson ahead of him. So I didn't love that pick. Just because, like, yeah, he's a big back. He plays with power. He plays with physicality. He plays with fearlessness. Not a great pass catcher. Not super explosive. In my opinion, pretty good feet, but just not, I don't think, a difference-making running back. I understand that they needed a running back that had some power to complement the speed backs that they already have. I just don't really care about that. I just want the best running back possible, honestly, and I would have seen potentially Johnson as a better guy in that role. But that's just my opinion. Again, so I didn't like that pick, but I did like Carson Schwarzenegger out of UCLA. I love his range. I love his speed. I love his sideline-to-sideline capability. I love his ability in coverage. And then I think he's got a rare ability to have speed and size. So he's 6'3", 242. He makes a ton of tackles, the most solo tackles in the country in 2024 with 90. Okay, and he shows great instincts. He's just all over the field. He's one of those linebackers. So, also, I thought linebacker was a low-key need for Cleveland as JOK is injured, and I'm not sure on the timeline for him. I do like the Fannin pick. I'm just a fan of the player. Okay, 6'3", 241, led the FBS in receptions and receiving yards per game in 2024. He's just an incredible guy with the ball in his hands, very difficult to tackle, the tightest hips you'll ever see. He moves very awkwardly. I do wonder how he fits in with David Njoku, because he's actually very much like David Njoku when David Njoku came out. Like, just the athleticism, the big yak plays, all that sort of stuff did scream off the tape on David Njoku's as well. So I could see the similarities there. I think that he's a decent blocker, but not a great blocker. He does need to develop a little bit more as a route runner, but this is just a guy that was extremely productive, a phenomenal athlete, could be a manufactured touch guy. I'm really intrigued by that addition. I would have maybe preferred a wide receiver, but I'm a big fan of that player. I'm a huge fan of Dylan Gabriel, which bumps it up to an A-. I love Dylan Gabriel. He was my favorite quarterback in the draft, not in terms of the best, but he was my favorite. Okay, he broke FBS records for starts and touchdowns all time. He's second all time in yards. I love him for his intelligence, his quick decision-making, his accuracy, his ability to move better than people think. His quickness behind the line of scrimmage is very, very good. His elusiveness is very, very good. And I think he just plays at a fast pace. His mind is fast. His release is fast. His accuracy is good. I wouldn't be surprised if Dylan Gabriel started for the Cleveland Browns. I think he's ready to play in the NFL. He's undersized, but I think he could be a good quarterback. So I really like that pick. I actually prefer that pick to Shedeur Sanders, so I am with the Browns on that. So between Gabriel and Schwarzenegger, who I both love those selections. Schwarzenegger was the first pick in the second round, by the way. Judkins and Fannin, I like Fannin as a player. I'm unsure about the need necessarily because they have a stud of a tight end already. Judkins, I understand the need, but I don't love the player. So ultimately, I land with an A-. Dallas Cowboys, I also give an A-. This was one of the best day twos among any team. Ezeraku and Revel in the second and the third round are two values. I thought Ezeraku was a first-round talent, in my opinion, a top 20, 25 talent in the draft. He is one of the best pass rushers in this class, 16 and a half sacks last year. His ability to set up tackles and rush with a plan was next to none. I mean, his was the best in the class. His ability to just understand how to attack as a pass rusher, just to string moves together, use his hands, use his dip, use his bend, which he has a lot of. He's a little undersized, but in Dallas's defense, opposite Micah Parsons, that's a terrorizing duo. That could be some Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis type stuff right there. Then you've got Siobhan Revel, who I thought had first round potential. He went in the middle of the third round, 6'2", 194. He can play press. He's got the length and he's got the speed to run with you in man coverage. Wouldn't be surprised if they replace Trayvon Diggs long-term with Revel, or if Bland moves inside to make Revel and Diggs their perimeter guys and Bland their nickel corner. That would provide a lot of playmaking to the secondary. All three of these guys can play the ball extremely well. I felt like Revel had a good understanding of zone, how to like read and react to the quarterback, and I thought his size really came in handy on 50-50 balls. So he was a guy I thought would have been a late first round, early second round pick, and they got him in the third round. I think because of some potential injury or medical concerns, but man, really talented guy, really talented corner. So Cowboys, A-. I could have argued an A. It's just that wide receiver and running back still have yet to be addressed, which is why it's not an A or an A+. The Denver Broncos, B- for me. I like the Barron pick in the first round. I love the RJ Harvey pick with the 28th pick in the second round. To me, arguably the most explosive back in the draft. 4.4 speed, incredible vision. His yards per carry was outrageous. His production was crazy. But I just loved how you could create any run into a home run. That's what I loved about him. I also thought he was very good as a receiver downfield. He does maybe need to improve a little bit in terms of pass blocking and maybe just taking the easy yards that are there, or the tough yards, like earning the tough yards. But his just knack for seeing the field is just next to none. I mean, his knack for seeing and exploding is unbelievable. So I think in Sean Payton's offense, he is going to be a home run threat consistently. He's also going to be phenomenal in the screen game, and he's a good receiving back. He should start for them instantly. He's probably not a guy that you want to give 20 to 25 carries, but like I've said many times with Sean Payton, he doesn't give running backs that many looks. It's always a committee. Pat Bryant, I thought was a reach in the third round. He's slow. 6'2", 204. Like ESPN ranked him as the 18th player at that position. That's crazy. Okay. So I saw some people have him around 10 or 11. You know, he ranked third in receiving yards per game and third in receiving touchdowns in 2024 in the Big Ten. But he had the second slowest time at the 40 in 4.61. I don't know, man. Like, I thought there were better receivers potentially on the board here. I don't know if this is the type of guy that changes your offense. Sure, he has a little bit more size than Franklin and Mims, but I just don't see him playing over any of these guys. I don't see him playing over Mims. I don't see him playing over Vele. Like, I honestly don't see it. He's obviously not playing over Sutton, so he's buried on a depth chart that I just don't see him. He's not athletic enough, in my opinion. I could be wrong. Savion Jones was also a pick out of LSU with the 37th pick in the third round. 6'5", 280. Feels like too big to play in Vance Joseph's defense as an edge player, so maybe he'll kick inside. We'll have to see how Vance Joseph uses him, but either way, I felt like Denver had a strong interior defensive line, so if that's the plan, I wouldn't give this a passing grade because this is not a need. If he is a bigger edge player, I could see him being the third edge player to complement Nick Bonito and maybe play some early downs to set the edge against the run and things like that. Powerful player, obviously, big, long, and strong, right? But I don't see much pass rushing upside here either. So I just felt like those are two limited players, limited athletes, maybe specific role players on the Broncos. I don't see them being superstars by any means. I don't see them being any more than backup or role players. So I just felt like in the third round, that's not very exciting. So outside of RJ Harvey, who I love and I'd give an A for this pick, I felt like everybody else was a little suspect. Next, the Detroit Lions. I give the Detroit Lions a B. I didn't like the Tyleik Williams pick in round one. I thought it was a reach and honestly not their biggest need. On day two, I really liked the Tate Ratledge pick. I felt like That's the perfect guard for the Lions. He's nasty. He's physical. He can move. He's 6'7", 308. He's massive. 37 guards started at games started at guard for Georgia, right? And really impressive at the combine from a workout perspective. The Georgia guys on the offensive line had incredible workouts all offseason. I think he's going to be great in a zone scheme because of his quickness and his range. I think also his footwork and his nastiness are going to make him a awesome run player for the Lions, which is amazing. But then they come back down to earth with a reach with Isaac Tesla, who has one of the best names in the draft, 6'4", 214. The guy can run 4.3 speed. He can get down the field, but what is he on this team, right? Is he the fifth receiver, the fourth receiver? So they have Amon-Ra, Jamison Williams. Some people think he could maybe get as high as the third receiver, right? But they have Tim Patrick still, and they have Khalif Raymond, right? So maybe he eventually earns the third spot. Early in his days as a third-round pick, he's probably playing special teams. That feels like a reach. He was a consensus reach, being the 17th ranked player at his position. But I will give the Lions this. He does have unique size and unique speed. And that at wide receiver can never be doubted and never be denied. I just felt like there were bigger needs for them on the board. Edge rusher would have been my preferred position for them. I would also argue that still corner could be a need. So I don't know, man. I didn't really love that, especially with the value. Maybe they could have got him a little later or traded back or something. The Green Bay Packers, I give them a C. I did not like their draft today. I did not understand it from a needs perspective. Funny enough, I'll be covering the Packers' entire draft on Bleacher Report tomorrow, so this will go over well. But I did like the Matthew Golden pick. But Anthony Belton was just not a need for me. Even if you really like the player, he's graded as a top 10 tackle on ESPN. 3-year starter at left tackle, had a strong Senior Bowl, 6'6", 336, huge human. But Zach Tom is a really good right tackle. Rasheed Walker is a decent left tackle. They brought in Aaron Banks at left guard. They have Elgton Jenkins. This is one of the best offensive lines in football. So you're using your second round pick on a team that was a playoff team 2 consecutive seasons on a backup. I just don't understand that. You know, maybe he becomes their starting left tackle and replaces Walker long term. Maybe that's what the plan is, right? They also have Jordan Morgan, who I think they want to play at guard as well. So I guess that is the plan, to add competition to Rasheed Walker. But I don't think Walker's bad. Like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Packers fans disagree with me. Maybe I need to dig into this a little bit more. But that's just my opinion. Belton, obviously a second-round pick. Walker was a 7th-round pick. So the Packers are high on this kid. Wouldn't be surprised if he did start just based on that. But I kind of see him as a backup for year one and maybe their long-term left tackle. So if that's what works out, that's what works out, and I'll have to change my grade. But I just didn't feel like offensive tackle was the biggest, most pressing need. When cornerback is desperate, when edge rusher could be needed, they need a pass rush, they need a secondary. I'm just confused why they don't address that. And then they go with Savion Williams, who is a complete project, 6'4", 222, a versatile playmaker with size, strength, and speed. This, to me, I don't get it. He's like the 8th receiver on their team at this point. They have a million receivers. Where are they going to play this guy? How are they going to use him? Is he even going to make the damn team as a 3rd-round pick? Is he the returner? Like, is he a gunner? Like, what is he going to do? They have a million receivers on this team. I think it was time to pick a corner or to address the defense. So for me, I give them a C. The Houston Texans, I'm going to go with a B+ for the Texans. This was a very confusing day 2 for them as they landed 2 receivers, which is crazy because this is a team with Nico Collins. This is a team with Tank Dell long-term. This is a team with Christian Kirk on a 1-year deal. This is a team with Hutchinson, Mechie, Braxton Berrios, you name it. They have like 6 or 7 guys. They brought in Justin Watson. They have a million receivers. But they go with Jaden Higgins, which I was like, are you kidding me? They went with a wide receiver over an offensive lineman. Are you serious? Like, seriously? And then they later get Jalen Knoll. Now, that being said, I like both of these players. So it's kind of me balancing, why did they take receivers with, I like these receivers? And at the same time, I'm trying to understand it to the degree of like maybe Tank Dell's injury is a little bit more serious than we think. Maybe he's not returning next year. And then at the same time, Christian Kirk's only on a 1-year deal. So Christian Kirk might be a placement holder for these receivers to develop, right? And then long term, you have Nico Collins, Knoll, and Higgins, and maybe Tank Dell long term for the Texans, right? So CJ Stroud loves his receivers. The Texans love their receivers. They're both different players. Higgins is an outside perimeter wide receiver with really good size, ball skills, and I think really good quickness to be able to release off the line of scrimmage. He's not very vertically fast, though, and doesn't scare defenses, but you already have Nico Collins to do that. Jalen Knoll will threaten defenses down the field with slot vertical speed. He is Christian Kirk, and it's funny enough that Christian Kirk is on the Texans. So you have Knoll to develop under Christian Kirk, giving them a vertical slot receiver. So that's the replacement right there. So I love that combination. I will say, I don't know why they picked 2 receivers. That feels like overkill when the offensive line was such a big position to address. But what I really loved about Nick Caserio today was he traded back and he still landed, in my opinion, the best tackle remaining after the first round, which was Ursary out of Minnesota. Has great power, pure pass protector, 6'6", 331. Didn't start playing football until his junior year of high school, but he started 1 game at right tackle in 2020 and the final 38 games at left tackle. He probably will be their long-term left tackle. He might even start at left tackle immediately. He was a top 5 or 6 tackle in this class, in my opinion. As a pure tackle, though, he might have been a top 3 or 4. His power and his anchor are excellent. I think he's going to make a very good pass protector in the NFL. And Jalen Smith was just kind of a random pick. I mean, they don't really need a corner, in my opinion. Jalen Smith is going to be buried on their depth chart. But from what I've seen, he does have pretty good press mirror match ability in man coverage, and he's going to be probably a depth guy for them. He might kick inside and play nickel and allow them another cover corner because Jalen Petrie is their nickel right now, and he's more of a safety, right? He's not really a pure corner. So that gives them some versatility maybe as some depth for nickel and an outside corner. And they've done well picking corners, so I'm not really going to judge, but it feels like they didn't really need a corner as opposed to a defensive tackle or an offensive guard or a center. I would have preferred those positions. So I give them a B+ because I really like the long-term projection of this draft so far, and I really like the wide receiver picks long-term, but I felt like they're kind of insignificant short-term. I really like the Ursary trickery with how they manipulated the board, though, so that also gives them bonus points. The Indianapolis Colts are up next. I gave them a B-. They picked 2 players, JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State and Justin Wally, a corner out of Minnesota. I didn't really think that corner was the biggest need for them, as they did address that with Charvarius Ward in free agency. They have Kenny Moore in the nickel spot, but he is getting older, I will say that. Jalen Jones, I kind of like, but he is inconsistent, and Juju Brents was injured last year. But they do have quite a few names that I feel like can contribute at corner. And, you know, Justin Wally, I'm just not sure how much he's really going to play. 5'10", 190. Maybe they're looking at the depth chart, and maybe they're trying to figure out the scheme change under Big Game Lou and how that might change the corner need for them. Yeah, I just wasn't a huge fan of that pick overall. And then I did like the JT pick because I did know that the Colts only have like 1 guy that is signed long-term at edge for them. So this is a very solid pick. High floor pick, in my opinion. Powerful edge rusher. You know, really good with his hands. Understands how to rush with a plan. Very well refined. And I feel like ready to play in the NFL. He's probably not like the best athlete in the world, not the most explosive, but he feels like an NFL starter for many seasons, kind of like what Sam Hubbard was for Big Game Lou in previous years. And then also, I gave them a B- because, yeah, the edge pick was decent, didn't love the corner pick. They could have used a guard, right? They could have used an offensive lineman and then a linebacker. So 2 of their bigger needs have not been addressed, and 2 days of the NFL draft have gone. So that's kind of depressing in my opinion. Jacksonville is up next, who have had a really weird draft. Obviously, they traded up for Travis Hunter. Then they traded up even more. They traded for another corner, Ransaw out of Tulane, who could be a fine player, right? He could be a slot corner. Now, I'm thinking about what they're going to be in Jacksonville. So they have Campbell, You would think Hunter's going to play some corner. You've got Jerrion Jones, right? Who played nickel last year, was pretty good. And then you also brought in Jordan Lewis, another slot corner. So I just don't understand why or how all these corners are going to play. I just don't understand. Is one of them going to play safety? Is Travis Hunter going to play safety? How's this going to work? Because their safety position sucks. Like, they need a safety, okay? So, he did have some really good measurables. I'll give him that. Third fastest 40, top vertical, and third best broad jump, okay? So, very good athlete, reliable tackler. As a nickel corner, that's important. But I just don't understand how all these corners are going to work. So I couldn't really give them a positive grade there. And then they selected a guard out of West Virginia who has a lot of versatility. And this is a common theme for Jacksonville this offseason. Robert Hainsey, Macari, guys that they signed this offseason. Hainsey's played guard, tackle, and center, right? At college or the NFL, okay? Macari has played tackle, tight end, guard. He could play everywhere, okay? But when you're looking at it, their guard position is pretty well confirmed with Macari and Cleveland. So I don't know where this kid's going to play. He does provide a lot of value because he's played right tackle, left tackle, and he also projects to kick inside to guard. So maybe he could be both. Maybe they believe that. But his arm length is only 32 inches, which is a red flag for a tackle. So I'm not sure he'll be able to play tackle in the NFL. So Milam, I believe is how you pronounce his name, Wyatt Milam out of West Virginia. Very good versatility, very good size, 6'7", 313. I just don't know, again, where he really plays. So I am confused. So I give them a C+ because I like always picking a versatile offensive lineman. I never hate that. And I felt like Caleb had really good measurables. So I give them a pass there. I just don't really know where these guys are contributing when you need a defensive tackle, when you need a safety that you don't have, okay? Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs, a B for me. The Chiefs, I felt like just got three solid players. Norman Lott out of Tennessee, who didn't play a ton of snaps, but does have some pretty interesting traits. 6'2", 291, kind of reminiscent of a Tershawn Wharton and what he was for the Chiefs. Explosive off the ball, and he can use his leverage to get under, protection and get into the backfield. So quickness, that ability to complement Chris Jones as potentially an interior rusher or even their number 2 defensive tackle as soon as right away, okay? So that's interesting pick. I was not as high on him as some others. They picked Gillette, 6'3", 264, Austin Gillette out of Louisville. 3-year starter, had 40 tackles for loss and 26.5 sacks, okay? He is definitely a need. They needed somebody to complement George Karlaftis. He is, in my opinion, a guy that he is similar to Karlaftis in terms of power, strong hands, right? Pops a tackle when he hits them, that sort of deal. I'm not sure if he's going to be a high-end pass rushing type. I don't really see it personally, but he does provide some versatility. He does provide that power that they look for, and maybe he's a long-term starter at edge, but that's not going to be a confirmation. They also added a really interesting cornerback who I do like, Noel Williams, 6', 199. He fits the prototype for a Chief corner. He is tall enough, 6', 199, really good in press, really good mirror match ability, just like a perfect L'Jarius Sneed, Charvarius Ward-esque player. Just, a lot in those press coverage alignment ability, okay? And that's exactly what the Chiefs do at a high level. They love to press. So I really like that pick. I felt like the defensive tackle and the edge position were definite needs, and they've addressed all their needs so far. I'm not sure if corner was really a need. They brought in Christian Fulton. They have Trent McDuffie, right? They have multiple guys that have played starting snaps for them. I don't really feel like Kansas City needed a corner. Maybe they could have used a safety today rather, or maybe just doubled up at edge or defensive tackle. But at least they did address positions of need in edge and defensive tackle. So I give them a solid B. Then you've got the Los Angeles Chargers, who get a Oh, the Raiders. Okay, let's do the Raiders first. The Raiders with a B. I always put the Raiders ahead of the Chargers because I list the Rams and the Chargers as Los Angeles, okay? Not LA. But I don't know why other websites like ESPN, this is just a side tangent, they list them as LA, which I don't understand. Is it not Los Angeles? Am I drunk? Okay, the Los Angeles Raiders, which they used to be, the Las Vegas Raiders, that's better, get a B. And this was a tough one. I almost went with a B+. I could see this being an A. I could also see this being like a C- because the Raiders were very risky for a team that needs to hit some doubles. Okay, Jack Bech out of TCU, very good story, 6'1", 214 wide receiver. He almost looks like a tight end. He's a big slot receiver in my opinion. And I'm just kind of wondering how he and Jacoby Myers will complement each other. How is that going to go down? Both of them actually are very reminiscent of each other in terms of their wiggle, their quickness in their route running, and then also just their body position. He's also got great hands. I think he could be a really good pro. Like, I'm not lying. This is a guy that was very productive at TCU. He had the 5th player in TCU history to record a 1,000-yard season. He was the Senior Bowl's most valuable player. He has great hand-eye coordination. And I felt like when watching him, he just like gave me the vibes of a guy that's going to consistently be a backbreaker to a defense, where he's going to catch the ball over the middle, shield defenders away from him, make plays after the catch, be a bit of a mismatch because of his quickness and his size. Like, and he's got that kind of weird in-between body where he's kind of a big receiver, but he's also kind of a tight end-ish. Doesn't quite have the height of a tight end, but yeah, he's another inside receiver, though. I don't see him as an outside guy, so I do wonder how he complements their current room. He doesn't quite have the speed to really play X, in my opinion. Darian Porter was a great pick. 6'3", 195. Incredible athleticism. I mean, insanely good special teams player at Iowa State, but he also has ball skills, size, speed, length. This guy had a 4.3 40. He's 6'3". He's got incredibly long arms, and when you watch the limited tape that's out there, it's really impressive. His body is almost reminiscent of Richard Sherman. He is Richard Sherman-like. This guy was commonly mocked to the Raiders for a reason. He is an incredible athlete. I think that his read and react skills and his ball skills will be excellent in zone. His length and his speed will make him really good in man. This could be a steal. If he pans out, he could be a steal. Caleb Rogers is an interesting pick. A very experienced offensive lineman, 52 college games at both tackle spots, and he also played at guard as well, but he'll likely play guard in the NFL out of Texas Tech. I'm not really sure that they needed a guard, but I never hate taking some extra depth on the offensive line. I would have preferred maybe going with a linebacker, maybe going with another cornerback, maybe going with another wide receiver. They have desperate needs at those positions, maybe even a safety. Charles Grant is just like Darian Porter, but at tackle, incredible upside. Played 41 games at left tackle. He's quick with incredibly long arms. He's got some of the longest arms in the draft. He's a massive human being, very wide, and he could be a steal if they can coach him up the right way. He could be a long-term projection at left tackle to replace Colton Miller. So you see the upside here with this draft class, but there's a lot of downside. Grant and Porter could be straight up ballers or busts. Rogers and Bech could also be guys that are just not quite, enough. Right? Like Rodgers could be just a perennial backup. Bech could just never find a role in the NFL. And as a second round pick, that's kind of a weird pick, right? Then you have the Los Angeles Chargers now, who I give a B. I almost gave a B-. I'm not a huge Trey Harris fan, but I will say that 6'2", 205. He's got speed. He can get downfield. He can play the X potentially. That's what the Chargers were looking for, so I can't complain. Even if I didn't love him personally, other people did, right? And he was a need for the Chargers, and he was the projected role and the projected type that the Chargers were looking for at wide receiver. So I accept that pick as a solid pick in the second round. Jermari Caldwell also was a need for the Chargers. They needed a big nose tackle that could stuff the run. He's probably limited as a pass rusher, but Oregon's scheme transfers well and translates well to what Los Angeles, the Chargers, want to do. Okay, they lost Puna Ford in free agency. They needed a replacement. This guy will contribute right away with a role to stop the run. I just don't see much upside necessarily. I think, Trey Harris could be a baller for them. He could be. I just think it's a solid draft, nothing really special, but they did get 2 positions of need on offense and defense. The Los Angeles Rams, I give a B-. Terrence Ferguson, I like as an athlete. I wasn't convinced as an overall tight end, 6'5", 247, right? He does have the all-time receptions and receiving touchdowns for tight ends at Oregon, okay? He also had the fastest 40-yard dash for tight ends at the Combine and the quickest 10-yard split. Great athlete and productive. You can't really go wrong there. With Sean McVay scheming him up plays, he'll probably do damage after the catch. So I like that pick the most out of the picks they had. It felt like it was early, 14th pick in the second round, but they wanted a tight end badly, so I understand it. Josiah Stewart out of Michigan, very good pass rusher, but undersized, 6'1", 249. I just felt like edge was not a position of need. I felt like, and looking at ESPN, they have addressed 0 positions of need according to ESPN. Not corner, not linebacker, not wide receiver, quarterback, or running back. All those positions have not been fulfilled, which is why they only get a B-. I wanted them to add a corner. I wanted them to add a linebacker. I wanted them to add a safety to get better in the secondary. They didn't do that. So, and they got an edge rusher who maybe can contribute, but he's got some nice pass rushing skills, but he's buried. Like, I don't know how much he's going to play, so I don't know. Then we have the Miami Dolphins, who I gave a B+. They only had 1 pick. Jonah Savanea out of Arizona, 6'4", 324, thick and big as hell. I told you guys this before. He's so big that his face did not fit in the lower third that I was trying to create for him in my mock drafts. He is so massive. He also had the second fastest 10-yard split, and he was pretty darn fast for a guy as big as he is. So he's going to be awesome in the running game, and this is the perfect type of pick for Miami. They needed a mauler. They need a power. They needed size. They needed nastiness in their offensive line. And not only does he have that, but he has movement. That is the perfect Miami Dolphin offensive lineman to help their running game. And they needed a little bit of just size. I mean, they're so lacking physicality on the inside of their O-line. They're lacking that protection for Tua. So I thought that was a really solid pick. Next, the Minnesota Vikings only had 1 pick. Ty Felton, wide receiver out of Maryland, C+. Pretty good value. I really like his measurables at 1.51 10-yard split, 4.37 40-yard dash. His film looked decent to me. Flashes as a route runner and a separator. Has pretty easy, effortless hands. But what's his role in Minnesota? At best, the 3rd receiver. At best, Jalen Naylor is probably going to get that spot early in the year, so he's the 4th receiver. So with your first pick in the draft since the first round, I just felt like you didn't get a player that really helps you right away, right? He might be a long-term 3rd receiver. This is the first player they've picked out of Maryland since Stephon Diggs, though, so that could be a good omen. I will say that, especially a wide receiver. But they needed corner. They could use interior defensive line long-term, safety short-term and long-term. So I just felt like they didn't address that. That's why I give it a C+. Then the New England Patriots, I felt like they had one of the best drafts today. And I know I'm biased and I'm a Patriots fan, but I think collectively, most people would agree that the Patriots had one of the best hauls on day 2. Travion Henderson was arguably my favorite running back in the draft. I mean, Ashton Genty was the best, but I could make an argument that Henderson was the 2nd best running back in this entire draft. His ability to explode and make big plays as a runner, his pass protection skills were awesome. His pass catching skills were awesome. He's arguably the best pass back in this class, and he's one of the most explosive players in the entire draft offensively. The Patriots need speed. They need game-breaking ability. They need game-changing talent, and TreVeyon Henderson is that type of player. He will immediately make an impact for this offense, and Josh McDaniels loves pass-catching backs who can pass block. So immediately as a rookie, he's contributing in that fashion, in that form. That is a hugely important position for the Patriots in this offense. They get their next James White type player, but with more explosion. Kyle Williams was one of my favorite receivers in the entire draft. I thought he was a top 5 wide receiver in this class easily. He's a big play threat, creating the most big plays in college football last year at this position. He had a 4.4 40. Guys like Steve Smith adore his game. Chris Sims had him as his second favorite receiver in the entire draft. He has great vertical ability, and he's smaller, but he can get off the line. He can win through his release. He's got quick feet, and he can burn you downfield. His tape against Travis Hunter, the cornerback, is extremely impressive. He can make plays through his route running underneath or down the field. This guy could be the number 1 receiver for Drake May long term. Jared Wilson, the best center in the draft. Nothing else has to be said. 3rd round, 31st pick with incredible measurables. That's what you're looking for. High ceiling out of Georgia, right? One of the best offensive linemen at the combine in terms of measurables. Fastest 40, 4.84 is insane. Tied for the second fastest 10-yard split, and his broad jump and shuttle ranked top 5. He's a really good pass blocker, but maybe needs a little bit of refinement, maybe a little bit raw, maybe a little bit young. But man, this guy has insane measurables, insane upside, and really could change the Patriots offense in the running game and the passing game and be Drake May's long-term center. I mean, that is an incredible pick out of Georgia that replaces Dave Andrews, if I'm not mistaken, also out of Georgia. So, yeah, love that pick. Then you've got my alarm going off. But besides that, you've got the New Orleans Saints, who took Kelvin Banks in the first round. I give them a C+. I think the Tyler Shuck pick, if they were going to pick a quarterback, that was my preferred choice. After Cam Ward, Tyler Shuck was my second favorite quarterback in the class. My question about this pick would be, should they have taken a quarterback or not? Should they have just gone into the season with Derek Carr or Spencer Rattler or some street free agent and just bomb the season and pick top 5 and get a quarterback next year? That's my question, right? Should they have maybe just picked a later quarterback in the draft? Maybe they should have went for the home run in Jalen Milroe. Maybe they should have done that, right? But with Tyler Shuck, I think that you get an answer right away. He's 26 years old. He's not extremely experienced from a game reps perspective, but his game is mature. I think he's accurate. He's got a stronger arm than you would think. His movement is plus. His 40-yard dash was excellent, right? Like pretty solid, like 4.6 range, I think. And then he is really good at avoiding sacks. He's really good at reading the field for the most part. And again, like, he impressed me. Like, I think he makes more plays off platform than people think, more plays outside structure. I think he's going to run an effective offense for Kellen Moore. Like, I think he's ready to start in the NFL, even without, a lot of reps under him at the college level, despite his age. But this is a worthwhile second-round quarterback. There's no debate. I just wonder if the Saints should have maybe not picked one. I don't know, though. But Vernon Broughton and Jonas Sanker, not my favorite picks. I didn't really view them as needs. Like, neither did ESPN, just to kind of back me up here. Quarterback was a need for them, but wide receiver, corner, edge, and offensive guard, according to ESPN. I would have said corner for sure, edge for sure, and offensive line for sure. Now, Kelvin Banks did get picked, so there's that, and that might address the offensive line, okay? But edge and corner. Corner would have been a pick that I thought they would have for sure made. I don't understand what they're doing at cornerback. Safety, they're old there, but I felt like they have their starters. Linebacker long-term could be a questionable position. Edge long-term is a questionable position. This team needs a lot of holes. Running back even. I would have been pretty interested by a running back pick. I just think Broughton is another one of these guys, like, big guy, can take on blockers and help out a Brazil inside to help be producing pressure and that sort of thing, right? So he's a complimentary player, nothing really special in my opinion. And then Jonas Sanker is another like 3-year starter, downhill safety, can play in the blocks, can make some tackles, maybe a long-term safety for them. But again, like, Neither of those guys really move the dial. I think this is all about Tyler Shuck. If he pans out, this could be an A-plus draft. Obviously, I love the Kelvin Banks pick. I just kind of am a little confused by how they're distributing their needs and how they're going about their plan, and it just feels so uncoordinated and things. Maybe I'm hating too much. I don't know. You could easily give this a B, and I wouldn't mind it either. So, yeah, I like Tyler Shuck. Maybe I should give this a B, when I contemplate it, but I just didn't really love the other picks, and I felt like maybe the Saints should just pass on quarterback altogether. Next up, the New York Giants are next up. The Giants, I thought, had only one pick, Darius Alexander, because they traded up for Jackson Dart. I like Darius Alexander a lot. He's a good player, 6'4", 305. He was a top 5 defensive tackle in this class. Excellent power, right? A good pass rusher. I think using his power and his length. His length is really impressive. And in a 3-4 style defense, I think he complements Dexter Lawrence as a 5 tech extremely well. He does have some traits and measurables that are similar to like a Leonard Williams type of player. I just don't know if defensive tackle was really the biggest need. Maybe they just viewed him as their best player on the board at their pick with the first pick in the 3rd round. Maybe that's probably why they picked him. But I felt like offensive line, they've been avoiding offensive line. I would have went there preferably rather than defensive tackle. And, maybe back to the secondary somewhere, but I can't hate this pick. I like Darius Alexander. I thought he was a 2nd-round talent. I just give it a solid B because it wasn't the biggest need. And, they have a great defensive line. Like, did they even need more defensive linemen? I don't know. Next up, the New York Jets. The Jets, I thought, had a solid day. Mason Taylor's a very solid tight end. He's a well-rounded receiver, 6'5", 251. He had the first 100 reception, 1,000-yard player in LSU history at tight end. I think he is effortless in his stride, very smooth in terms of yards after catch ability, in terms of downfield creation, in terms of his routes. I think he runs a well-rounded all-around route tree. I feel like he's most effective from 5 to 15 yards as a receiver. I think he does make plays in that regard, and I think that will complement Justin Fields short-term and give them a long-term, very solid tight end, okay? Like a Dalton Schultz type who is maybe a little bit more athletic. Then you have Thomas, the corner out of Florida State, 6'2", 197. He is interesting. I'm not the biggest fan because he's slow, and I just don't like slow corners. But he is physical, great in press coverage, very big and long, and I could see the comparison to a Carlton Davis if you're talking from the view of Aaron Glenn, a physical, in-your-face corner who can muck things up and can, with a safety over the top, be a very effective corner. I just wonder if he has the speed, because I don't know, man. I really don't know. But I do think that FSU typically does produce very good cornerback play, very refined, detailed press players, and that does fit Aaron Glenn in the style that he's looking for. So they get 2 needs. Corner long-term, Brandon Stevens will be the guy short-term on the outside. DJ Reed, they lost this offseason, and then tight end was their second biggest need outside of right tackle. Philadelphia Eagles, I give an A- because I love Andrew Makuba. He's a perfect Fangio safety, a guy that's great as a free safety with range and speed at 4.45, really good instincts, really good ball skills, really good ability to read the field, but he's also fearless coming downhill and making tackles. CJ Gardner-Johnson left in a trade. Makuba is a great replacement for him with the same sort of energy, fearlessness that the Eagles were looking for, and they get their 2 biggest needs in the draft so far at linebacker and safety, immediately filling their defense up from the losses they sustained this off season. So I give it an A-. I love Makuba. I love his fearlessness. I love his tackling ability. I love his just stick his nose in it and get after it. The Pittsburgh Steelers, I give a B+ for Caleb Johnson. Thought Caleb Johnson was a top 5 running back in this class. He's a big back who's explosive. Okay, doesn't have incredible speed, but he just finds a way to find a hole with quick, sputtering and spittering and dicing, feet. His feet are very short strided, and he kind of is able to just dance around and find a great lane and then explode. And I feel like in space, because of his size, his frame, his kind of width, he's very hard to tackle. And he's got very good vision for a zone back, which is exactly what Arthur Smith is looking for. This guy will be the starting ball carrier for the Steelers in 2025. I think beyond Jaylen Warren, right? Like Jaylen Warren, very good change of pace back, excellent receiver and all that sort of stuff. Caleb Johnson is a real bell cow. Some people think he's Najee Harris. I think he's Najee Harris with more home run ability. Not very good in the passing game, though. There are better guys for sure in that regard. But I like him in Arthur Smith's offense for sure. Next up, we have the San Francisco 49ers. The San Francisco 49ers, they went defense with their 3 picks in the first, the third round, okay? They went with a D tackle, a linebacker, and a corner, and all of them were positions of need. I do maybe wonder if they should have double dipped at edge or double dipped at defensive tackle rather than going with a linebacker and a corner, but I understand all their selections for different reasons. Alfred Collins is my favorite pick that they made with the 11th pick in the second round. 6'6", 332, absolute human mammoth out there, just an absolute run defending monster, okay? And he's got some great length to him. He's one of the longest defenders in this class. He's kind of got like a Calais Campbell type build to him. Like he's got more belly than Calais, but he's got that long arm ability, okay? And just sheds blocks easily, takes on double teams. He's going to be a guy that you center your run defense around. So you get a Michael Williams, who's an excellent edge setter. Now you get a monster in the middle in Alfred Collins, who's going to take pressure off Nick Bosa and the rest of the defensive front and be a key piece for Robert Saleh against the run. They struggled against the run big time last year and even the year before in their Super Bowl season, getting to the Super Bowl. That's a big time pick right there. Nick Martin, the linebacker out of Oklahoma State, wasn't too familiar with his game, to be honest, but once I really study his traits, it makes a lot of sense why they like him. He does have some Dre Greenlaw fearlessness to him. He is extremely fast. He's one of the fastest linebackers in this class at a 4.53 linebacker speed is pretty crazy. He's also got a really good 10-yard split, which speaks to his explosion to the football. And I thought that he shows really good chasing ability, really good pursuit, really good fearlessness. He is one of those San Francisco, take your head off, just absolute nut bars, just absolute assassin linebackers. So makes a lot of sense. They have D Winters to compete with him, but Nick Martin could start right away as a weak side linebacker with his range and his speed. So look out for him. And then Upton Stout has one of the best names in the draft. He's got some good 40 time, 4.40 time. He is an undersized cornerback that will play the nickel position, likely for the 49ers. They probably will move Lenore out wide along with Green and put Stout in the nickel spot. He's got good quickness. He's got fearless tackling ability. Just a guy that, really is a 49er type. Like Stout and Martin are just guys that get to the football and are fearless. And that's what the Niners often draft on defense. So I like their draft so far. It doesn't wow me, but I give it a B. The Seahawks, I give a B+ for their efforts because it has extreme upside with Nick Emanwari out of South Carolina. I mean, incredible range potentially here in terms of versatility. 6'3", 220, fast, long, big, Cam Chancellor type of guy. I mean, this guy could be special with Mike Macdonald. That's what makes me believe is Mike Macdonald sees something in this guy that he can mold, that he can create into a monster, right? He's got really good playmaking capabilities, really good flexibility and versatility, and I think that he could be a Kyle Hamilton for him. So that is interesting. Julian Love could play free safety. I think Emanwari will be closer to the ball in their defense. Elijah Arroyo out of Miami, 6'5", 250, great speed at tight end, so another great athlete here. He doesn't have quite the production that you would like to see, and he got injured a lot. But as a vertical tight end, adds a bit of speed at tight end. They don't really have a lot of speed at receiver, so that's an interesting combination there. But very good athlete. I understand why they made this pick. Not much of a blocker. I do wonder how he fits into a Kubiak offense, but I'm intrigued by the pick because I like the athlete for sure. So yeah, he's a guy that can definitely make plays down the field for them and stress the seam. Jalen Milroe, we know, we've talked about it. Most upside of any quarterback, arguably in the entire draft. Could be Lamar Jackson-esque. Could be Jalen Hurts, right? That's a guy I'd compare him to. 6'2", 217 quarterback. One of the best runners I've ever seen on film at the quarterback position, comparable to Lamar Jackson. He is so fast, so explosive, special in that trait. He needs to work on his mechanics. He needs to work on his footwork. He needs to work on his seeing of the field at quarterback, but he's got crazy upside, so it's worth a third-round pick, in my opinion, for a team that has Sam Darnold, an interesting starter, but not someone that's locked down epic elite, okay? So Jalen Milroe is the type of shot that I would take in the NFL draft. So I give it a B+ for the incredible upside that this class offers. I mean, all their picks are incredible upside athletes. I mean, Emanwari, Arroyo, Milroe, those guys can all be superstars, but they could all bust. I'll say that as well. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are next. I thought they rebounded a little bit on day 2. Benjamin Morrison was definitely a round 2 corner. Very good man skills, press coverage skills, length, speed, 6 foot, 193. I like his ability. I could see him very much being a Carlton Davis for Todd Bowles. I can see it being seamless for him. His arms are short, but it just seems like he smothers receivers consistently, and he's always in their hip pocket. So Todd Bowles knows secondary players. Then they go after Jacob Parrish, Kansas State, quick slot corner, outstanding 10-yard split, one of the fastest 40s. He's going to be a guy that is electric. He could be a man coverage guy as a slot corner. Maybe the Bucs want to play a little bit more man coverage, but I am a little confused why they took 2 corners. I'm not going to lie, because I felt like they needed edge. I felt like they needed safety and linebacker, and those have yet to be addressed. So that's why it's not A, but I really like that they're addressing secondary, because Jamel Dean could be on his way out, in the coming years. They needed a nickel corner, in my opinion. They needed to address the middle of the field defensively, and I think Benjamin Morrison fits their scheme really well. I can understand what they're looking at here. So that's why I give them a B+, but at the same time, I am wondering about their needs and having addressed a lack of addressing their needs. Then the Tennessee Titans, I give a B. Maybe we should move the Bucs to a B just because the needs thing is pretty glaring. But the Tennessee Titans, a B for me. Oladejo out of UCLA, edge, solid player, 6'3", 259, ranks as the 10th best edge rusher on ESPN. I felt like he was a little bit of a reach, especially with some of the guys that were still on the board. But the Titans did need an edge rusher for sure. It was a big need for them, so it makes perfect sense. He does have versatility. Like he's a good athlete. He can drop into coverage. He can get to the quarterback. He can set the edge. Right? He played inside linebacker, moved to outside linebacker, so he's got a lot of range in his game. So that's interesting. And being that this is a Baltimore-style defense, I like that about him. I just wonder if he's quite the edge rusher specialist pass rusher that you would take this high. Kevin Winston out of Penn State is an incredible athlete, 6'2", can run well, I think can play strong safety in the NFL, right? Can make some big hits, can play the ball well, can play on special teams. I think you can, blitz him. You can have him stop the run and come downhill. I don't think he's incredibly rangy, but he's got good ball skills. So he was probably going to go higher if he wasn't injured. So I like those 2 picks because they're both at positions of need defensively at edge and safety. Both of them they needed, okay? But they didn't address Cam Ward, okay? They didn't help Cam Ward with a wide receiver, which is kind of disappointing. So I give them a little bit of a minus there. And I felt like both players are solid, but not amazing. I think I prefer the Kevin Winston pick overall. And then the final draft grade is an A- for the Commanders, who picked up Trey Amos in the 2nd round, and that's it. But Trey Amos was arguably a first-round corner for many people. Physical press, has got good length, can 6'1", can play zone, can play man. I think his press and his length is what they're looking for in the man-to-man ability of Amos for Dan Quinn, okay? He's really, in my opinion, very sound at recognizing, wide receiver combination, routes, formations, things like that, how to break on the football. I think that he also uses his size well when the ball is in the air and things like that. So Washington desperately needed a corner. I think that's a very good pick. I would also like to see them address safety and edge. I feel like maybe they should have traded back to get some extra picks because they still need some players on defense. But A- for me. There it is, guys. My day 2 draft grades for the 2025 NFL draft. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts, analysis, and my grades. If you disagreed, let me know in the chat. Let me know in the comments. If you're not a jabroni, subscribe. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.